Good evening, everyone. As you're arriving into the Zoom webinar, you may notice some members of the administrative team are panelists this evening. We are going to have an opportunity to move you all into the panelist group, which will allow us to see you and hear you a little later in the agenda. But we're going to get started in just a minute or two. We're giving people a chance to into the room. Just double checking that all of our attendees are having a chance to get in. And I want to let you know that this meeting is being recorded for security purposes, just so you're fully informed. Looks like the addition of attendees has slowed down a little. So I think we'll get started. If during the course of the meeting, you have questions that you want to make sure we get answered this evening, please use the Q&A in the chat area. And then also, Jason Payne has given us a little bit of direction about ways to see the slides clearly as we move through them tonight. Okay, Dr. Johnson, you can confirm for me, it looks like we've slowed down on additional participants.
Yes, looks that way.
All right, terrific. So I'm going to get started, and I'm really happy that everyone was able to join us tonight in these new ways of connecting, and I'll look forward to seeing you all when we're finished with the presentation portion of the evening. So I wanted to first just give us all a reminder of the equity vision for the district. This is a vision statement that was drafted and adopted by our Board of School Directors 2 years ago in 2019. The Board of School Directors worked with the Delaware Valley Consortium for Equity and Excellence's Bob Jarvis, as well as the full administrative team and the full board at that time to draft this statement. And we have returned to the statement again and again as an administrative team to remind us exactly what our North Star is as a district. So I rarely like to read a screen, but just I feel like it's almost like reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. This is our equity vision as a district, recognizing the diversity of our community. The School District of Springfield Township is committed to and accountable for advancing equity and excellence for all of our students. We in the School District of Springfield Township endeavor to provide equitable opportunities for high-level, meaningful, and engaging learning experiences for each and every student, regardless of racial, ethnic background, economic condition, or other dimension of identity or difference. We recognize that in order to achieve educational equity, we must apply principles of fairness and justice in the allocation of resources and work toward the elimination of institutional barriers to access and opportunity. We aim to ensure that funding, policies, practices, and initiatives will enable every student to receive what they need to maximize their success. In order to foster growth toward equity, we must engage in continuous reflection and ongoing measurement of our efforts. I think that the Board of School Directors did an outstanding job in articulating the mission of the district and the vision of the district with regards to equity. I think it's important that as a school community, we return to this vision on a regular basis. I want to talk a little bit about the meeting agenda and why in that previous slide, there were certain phrases that were highlighted. Those phrases were highlighted because as an administrative team, we've prepared for this evening's meeting with those 3 areas in mind. And so we're going to talk a little bit about continuous reflection and ongoing measurement. We're going to present on some engaging learning experiences happening in our schools. And then we're going to talk a little bit about ways that we have worked to eliminate barriers for our students, in particular in the last year during the pandemic. And then we're going to have an open discussion. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the continuous reflection and ongoing measurement. I want to first talk about our Equitable Practices Committee, the group to which you are all attending tonight, and our equity team, which was established in the fall by Dr. Hacker. Also want to talk about our equity team audit, and then some other activities that are going on, just to provide you an update, a general update. So the equity team that was established in the fall identified a vision and mission within that equity statement, and that is to provide and develop recommendations for the continuous fostering of improvements in district equitable practices designed to support students and staff in the district, and to support the advancement of established district equity goals and our district equity statement. So essentially, the equity team's vision and mission is to support that equity vision and statement that was adopted by the board 2 years ago. We've been very happy to have 40 to 50 members of the staff who have attended our first equity team meeting last month. And we have just over 40 members of the staff who have signed up to participate in the equity audit this spring. So the first thing that our equity team is going to be doing is conducting an internal audit. And we're going to be using the results of that audit to identify targets for growth for next year. And we're going to be using a tool that links us directly to the 6 goals for educational equity. So this document, which was shared with the equity team last month, requires, and actually let me go back so you can see those categories. It requires each committee to take a look at a series of questions and then to rank our district 1 to 4 in answering each of those questions. So for example, the first goal is comparably high achievement in other student outcomes. And the focus here is on academic achievement, disaggregated and analyzed, and that we want to see that students across the board have high comparable performance. So there are a set of questions that the committee members who signed up for this committee, goal 1, will be answering this spring. And we have scheduled 3 work sessions during the course of the spring semester in order to answer these questions. And we have administrators and staff, both support staff and teaching staff on all of these committees so that we can really dig into the data. Members of the community will be brought in different ways as we answer these questions, but because student data is a part of what we'll be looking at, we're not going to have community members in the on-the-ground committees. Those committees will actually bring information to equitable practices as we complete the audit. So this is the tool we're going to be using. And our goal again is to present the results of the audit by the end of the summer so that we can identify very clear targets for growth for next year. In addition to that, in the area of ongoing reflection, our administrative team is reading and attending a series of workshops led by Floyd Cobb and John Crownapple, and that is bringing together our work on belonging and equitable practices. As many of you know, in your relationship to the district, either as a member of the staff or as a community member who's been actively engaged, we have been trying to grade belonging and equitable practices for several years now. You're going to hear a little bit more about that from our building principals tonight. So we're reading the book, Belonging Through a Culture of Dignity. This morning was actually our first of 4 2.5-hour workshops, and our full administrative team is participating. In addition, we've had the opportunity, I'll say, it was a difficult opportunity, but an opportunity nonetheless, as a result of the Zoom bombing last month. We've had an opportunity to think about how we respond to incidences of bias in our schools. We have reviewed the ADL resource, and I want to thank Tammy Spohl for sharing that resource with the administrative team last month. We have each conducted a review of the ADL resource on responding to instances of bias and hate in our schools. And we've used that to reflect on how well we've done as an administrative team in answering the questions that any community would have when such an incident occurs. Certainly we want to be proactive moving forward, and the security involved in this webinar is one of those ways of being proactive, but we want to make sure that our response to bias is thoughtful and thorough. And so the administrative team has been taking a look at those resources. And then finally, for me, we've been listening to student voices, and we're going to continue to do so. So in the last month, we've sat a student representative to the school board. Her name is Maddie Dunlop, and Maddie has among her responsibilities being the voice of the student body at our school board meetings, so that when board members have questions and would like a student perspective, they will have someone in those meetings to provide that perspective. In addition, Dr. Johnston and I had our first superintendent's advisory meeting last week. We met with the middle school contingent of our advisory committee. And next week, we'll be meeting with the high school group. Starting in the fall, when we can again meet in person, we're looking forward to meeting with children at Erdenheim and Enfield, all with the same goal: listening to our student voices, hearing about their experiences, and learning from them, and bringing that learning back to our full administrative team so that we can use their voices and what we've learned to inform our practices moving forward. We're also in ongoing conversation with the NAACP Youth Leadership Committee. Last week, representatives from the committee shared a powerful video with us about the experiences of students of color in our schools, whether that's interactions with staff, with classmates, with members of the community. And we are meeting this Sunday. A large group of our administrative team is going to be meeting on Sunday afternoon with Commissioner Graham and the members of our NAACP Youth Leadership Committee to think about how best to roll out the video and to provide an opportunity for growth for our staff, increased understanding. And I just really want to compliment the members of the Youth Leadership Committee for the work they've done this winter. In the midst of everything else that students are going through right now, they have found the time to really be thoughtful and to bring a very meaningful video to the administrative team. And we intend to bring that forward to this group in the future this spring. And then finally, in listening to student voices, our building principals are going to talk tonight about our belonging focus groups. They are meeting with focus groups at each of our buildings. And so with that, I am going to turn it over to our building principals, Dr. Rittenhouse, Mr. Fuller, Dr. McLaurin, and Dr. Feely, and their assistant principals who are with them as well, to be able to talk about some engaging learning experiences that they are having and that our students are having at this time. So they're going to talk a little bit about the belonging focus groups, as well as the Black History Month recognition that they have been engaged in each of their buildings. So Dr. Rittenhouse, would you like to begin?
Yes, Coach Yannicone, if it's okay, I'm going to change up the batting order a little bit and have Mr. Fuller bat lead off here. He's a little faster than me. So,
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rittenhouse. Thank you, Dr. Yannicone. Hi, everybody. How are you? In terms of our student belonging focus groups, about a month and a half ago, we administered a survey from the University of Pennsylvania and a group called Catalyst that helped to facilitate the survey to gauge our students' sense of belonging within Erdenheim, the middle school, and the high school. And we got back a treasure trove of data that was disaggregated by all sorts of demographic characteristics. And what we found was that there were some consistent disparities between demographic groups that were noticeable across each school, and then those that were particular to each school. And so we decided that this data was useful in that it would tell us where to dig, right? It would tell us where to seek more information from our students and where to find out stories that could help to inform our practice as educators. So we use that data, we use the open-ended responses to go back to our faculty and say, when you look at this, what demands action, right? What stands out, what demands action, what do we need to really dig deeper into? And we facilitated a process. I know it was pretty similar across all three schools to find out, where we wanted to dig a little deeper. And then after that exercise with our faculty, we started to think about, well, how can we really get an understanding of what our students' experiences and stories are? And so we decided to construct focus groups to meet with our student. At the middle school, we have constructed, with the help of our administrative interns who are here tonight, 48 focus groups, or 48 students, 12 focus groups that we think we can get some useful information out of to sort of probe and explore those statistical disparities and try to find answers to some of the questions that came out of the survey. Our hope is to gather that information from our students, and our hope is that by being able to tell specific stories about things that have happened in our building, we will be able to generate a sense of urgency and a really compelling narrative for our faculty. So we're in the process of creating those focus groups. We're also working with the MPA. I know that Krista Keister, who is one of our administrative interns who's helping us with this project, had a really, what she characterized as a great conversation with Angela Beal, who I know is also here, about how to communicate clearly what our intent is around this project so that we avoid, when you bring several African-American students together into a room and they look around, we don't want them wondering, why am I here? Right? Why am I here? And why are we all together and we all share characteristics? We wanted to avoid tokenism, but at the same time, try to gather some unique voices and experiences. So we're in the process of doing that. We expect to have one focus group a month from now until the end of the school year with each of those focus groups to gather information that's specifically tied to the survey results that we got back from Penn. So, and I know that the other principals are working on similar projects. As far as Black History Month goes, we're lucky to have a very committed and equity-minded faculty at the middle school. Probably the keystone of our Black History Month recognition is the Instagram Then project, which was spearheaded by the MPA and in the building by Patrick Cody and our social studies department. I was lucky enough to be at their presentation last night, where I got to see a couple of really compelling presentations of what would it be like, what would have been shared in the civil rights era if social media had existed. And so, one of the more moving ones was about Emmett Till, who, and that incident, and it was heartbreaking and eye-opening to hear what our students have to say about that. We also have hosted every single day in our cafeteria, we host Black History Month trivia with students, and we have across the windows in our cafeteria informational boards that were actually created by our lunchroom assistants, and they contain all kinds of information, a timeline per se of Black history. Students get to peruse that in like sort of a gallery walk style. And then the cafeteria assistants asked Black History Month trivia questions. They've solicited our staff for donations in order to purchase prizes for Black History Month trivia. And that happens at lunch in our cafeteria. Our library has been extremely active in Black History Month. We feature, Erin Bloom, our wonderful librarian, features each month a feature for Black History Month, including podcasts like the This I Believe Muhammad Ali episode, Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls, the Rosa Parks episode, a podcast called Hey Black Child. We have had a feature called Amplifying Black Voices Through Poetry. It features poetry from Elizabeth Alexander, Maya Angelou, Jericho Brown, Langston Hughes, Nikki Giovanni. And then we've had movies to stream for Black History Month recommendations for our students that have come out from our library. Also, I know that Natalie Lane is working really hard on revising our poetry unit. She's here tonight to feature Black voices in our poetry unit in ELA. And of course, our 8th grade students have begun Raisin in the Sun and the study of institutional racism and redlining that comes with that. So we have a pretty robust celebration of Black History Month at the middle school. And with that, I'm gonna tag my next principal colleague.
All right, thank you, Zach. We use the sense of belonging focus group model that Zach's staff has used and employed. And I'd like to thank Krista and Tammy who are on the call, because they've really been helpful helping me design an activity. That activity we conducted with my staff today, paraprofessionals, administrators, and teachers today. Spent an hour and 45 minutes working on this activity. It's our third year at the high school administering the sense of belonging survey. We had about 575 students participate, which if there's any high school principals in the audience here, that's a pretty great number for 740 kids. And we had our teachers review the anecdotal comments, which were 75, and we took the 250 comments and reduce them down. If they said, I don't know, or I'm not sure, that's not a comment we would need to go through. And we basically, any comment that we thought would get attention, we had the staff focus on them. And the questions in the survey focused on, do you have a sense of belonging in our school? Do you have a trusted adult you can turn to? What activities are you involved with at the high school? Questions of that nature. Do you have a sense of belonging overall? And then we had our staff go through the comments today, 2 comments to make you feel good, 2 comments to make you feel not so good, and then 2 comments that demand action. They then brought the demand action comments together, and those comments are going to be linked with questions. And in a similar manner to what the middle school is doing, we'll have 12 to 14 focus groups, some heterogeneously grouped, some homogeneously grouped, to really kind of drill down on some of the student comments and student voices. And March 3rd, we're meeting and training the staff. March 10th, we will facilitate our student group. So we're excited about that. So it's very exciting to celebrate Black History Month. Pardon me. While not related to Black History Month, we had our annual MLK Junior Day of Service. I've sponsored that day for 25 years as a high school principal. We were unable to make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, which we've done in the past, 500 to 600 for a local homeless shelter. But instead this year, we cleaned up the courtyard just in time for the snow to crush it. And I got to see it for about 8 days. Our courtyard looks beautiful. So when the snow melts, you'll certainly see that for outdoor learning and lunch. We also collected food for a local residential facility. Like Zach, we're blessed with a great student leadership groups here. Our Voices of Excellence, Mr. T and Mrs. Moore, and our students created videos that are being shown in the morning on our morning broadcast about inspirational African Americans from the Philadelphia area, which means you have to typically do a little more research. They're not readily made, and they produce them. They're original videos, and they're broadcasted during the daily morning announcements. And on top of that, so if you watch the announcements, you had an opportunity this past Friday night, Voices of Excellence partnered with the Multicultural Parents Association, Black History Month Trivia Night. So if you're watching the videos on our television station, you would be able to hopefully do well in trivia. And after the answers were given, Mr. T and his students presented informative slides. We have several displays here at the high school. VOE is a bulletin board display which showcases famous Black Americans right around the corner here. Jenny and Tiffany, our wonderful library staff, have created a quote unquote, we need diverse books, we read diverse books campaign and display, which focuses on our diverse catalog of books here at the high school, and academically in terms of curricular topics in social studies at ELA, just some samples of some things that we've done in global history, and examination and history of voting rights for all individuals from multiple perspectives. First semester, we ran our African American Studies course. Thank you, Mr. T and students. And I think we had about 17 or 18 students and a new textbook. And ELA, and throughout the month of February, ELA has continued its work focusing on social injustice and the celebration of the strengths, talents, and accomplishments of Black authors. For example, in 10th grade, pairing and close readings of works by Martin Luther King, John Lewis, Stacey Adams, the Reverend Raphael Warnock, and others, and themes drawing connections between fiction such as with Lee, Maya Angelou, Wes Moore, Steve Bico, and Nelson Mandel. So there are some of the many things we do here to celebrate Black History Month. Thank you. I don't know who's third. Who's batting third? So
We can go Erdenheim since you changed up the order, Dr. Rittenhouse. Good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. McLeod. I'm the building principal at Erdenheim Elementary School. Dr. Markle is also here with me as well, and we'll kind of tag team to share a little bit about what we're doing. First, to talk a little bit about the Sense of Belonging survey that we distributed. We distributed the survey to our 4th and 5th graders only at the elementary level. And the way we distributed it, which was a lot different this year, we spent time with the students and we went through and read all the questions with them. And it wasn't just myself, it was Dr. Markle, our 2 school counselors joined us. And we were able to read each of the questions and answer questions that the students had about those particular questions. Through that, we hoped that they were able to give their best answers. To be honest, we weren't sure if the data would show us a significant dip because the students were in virtual learning since last March, but we were pleased to see that overall we have a really strong sense of belonging in the data that we received. Through that, we were able to take a look at it when we received the data back, and we were able to share it with our students. They had the chance to watch the data, share it through a video, and give us some feedback as to whether or not they understood the information that was shared, and also volunteer to participate in a focus group. We did have our first focus group with a few of our students about 2 weeks ago, about 16 students in 4th grade. We chose 4th grade just because we feel like the students will be in the building for another year, and we can really use that group to grow with and try to begin to learn more about the experiences of our students in our school community. In those groups facilitating, like I said, our school counselors are there, and it's really been great to kind of at least get started. As you know, in elementary school, I think the biggest thing that we realized after our first group is we need to really focus on encouraging our students to have their voice. When you're sitting in a space with adults, sometimes it's hard for them to speak up and share openly. And so the work that we have to do over the next few weeks with that group is just to build up their confidence, encourage them to be able to share their perspectives, because we really want to hear from them in order to get better as a school community. And looking more closely at our data, the best you can get on the survey is a 5. We got a 4.03, which is a strong number. But as we share with our staff this afternoon in our workshop, is that when you look more closely at it, there are small groups of populations within our student population that don't feel a strong sense of belonging. And we have to really commit to learning who those students are and trying to provide some solutions so that they can feel connected to our school community. And so we're really excited about that work. This afternoon, we had the opportunity to meet with our staff and to go through that. So I'm going to let Dr. Markle share a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, we had a really great session this afternoon. As you guys all know, it was an afternoon PD session for teachers and support staff. And so similar to the sessions that have happened at the middle school and the high school, we shared data from the Sense of Belonging. And we really wanted to get the feedback from our staff of what is the most important, like what's a call to action. And I think Mr. Fuller is the one that, and Mr. Payne have used those terms, and it was really helpful for our staff. Like after looking at this data, our staff had some good conversations about like, what's the top priority right now? What can we look at? And so they identified questions or responses and looking at the data responses that were concerning. And then in small groups, they had some conversations about like, what does this mean? What can we do? And really like, and it was really great because I think after these conversations, we also have a really great staff at Erdenheim who's really committed to this work. And I think it just commits us to even more of like, how can we increase this sense of belonging? And even though that score of 4 is really good and really strong, there's still a group of students that don't feel that same belonging. And so how do we increase that? And how do we look at what we do and the practices we do to make sure that we're including all of our students? So it was a really powerful session, I felt, for our staff. And we're really looking forward to continuing those student focus groups too, and finding some more information. And shout out to our school counselor too, Miss Doherty. She's on here. She's going to really plan some awesome team building activities just to get our students a little bit more comfortable. But we're excited to share and learn and grow together with that group of students too.
And for Black History Month and recognition, as Dr. Markle, we have a great staff. I would love to recognize our school librarian, Mrs. Schulteis. She's been really great about kicking off Black History Month. In every single class, she chose to read a book aloud to all the students to introduce and start off Black History Month. She shared lots of resources with our classroom teachers so that they can use and have to share different stories with the students so that they can become more educated about different experiences throughout history. We've also have our staff, as we visit classrooms, we see lots of work going on. There's been discussions, there's been videos that have been shown, there's been projects that have been worked on in connection to our Spartan Pride time. And so one of the things that we're excited about, and as a school community, we always talk about pride. And I think our classroom teachers this month have really done a nice job connecting our focus and recognition of Black History Month to our pillars of pride, those stories of perseverance, those stories about how respect needed to be shown, how integrity relates, and dependability and empathy. And so through conversations, through projects, through books, our students have really been engaged in various Black History Month projects across the board. We're excited this Friday. We're going to be having our grade level Black History Month assemblies. And in that, we've reached out to the community where we've had families work with their children at home to submit projects to us, where they did some research together to talk about different experiences of African Americans and how they've contributed to American history. And so we've culminated that into a grade level assembly for each grade level. I want to give a special shout out to our high school team, Mr. Puntel and the Voice of Excellence. They've been able to contribute to our project as well. And so on Friday, we're going to be releasing out assemblies to our students, our staff, and our families to see all of the hard work that our students did to make this happen. We're excited. It's a great learning opportunity, and we're hoping that our students walk away with an understanding of African American history, but also the connection to our pillars of pride, because they go hand in hand, and it really does, I think, represent a lot of what we stand for through the stories that have been told. And so we're excited about what we have going on, and we want to encourage our students to continue learning.
Yeah, and those, I got to give a shout out. We have our own videographer with Dr. Mack. He's always making our videos, but those will be YouTube links that we'll share with our families so that everybody you can view them whenever after they're released, and they'll be released on Friday. And yes, we're excited for this work. It's awesome to see the work that the families have shared with us. But even I also want to highlight too, like the VOE sent projects down to us, and they were really, I thought, instrumental in picking people that some of our students have not heard about. And so it was really a learning opportunity, even for me, and I think for our students too. So just wanted to thank them as well. And just definitely, like Dr. McLaurin said, Mr. Puntel and the high school music department, the information they shared with us and the performances are so inspiring. So I hope that you all will take some time to watch our assemblies.
I'm sure it's going to be fantastic, you guys. And before I introduce Dr. Feely and Mr. Fleming, just want to sort of reiterate for the community who's on the call today, the Sense of Belonging survey is out of the University of Pennsylvania's Graduate School of Education. And the age group that is permitted to participate in the survey is 4th through 12th grade. And so we're able to have our 3 of our 4 buildings participate in that survey. While we don't have the Sense of Belonging survey at Enfield, I know Dr. Feely has been on board now for about 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, and Mr. Fleming, who's just in his 3rd month of this, have a few things they'd like to share about what's been happening at Enfield. So Dr. Feely and Mr. Fleming, they're all yours.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Dr. Feely, and I have been here actually, I think this is my 4th week. So I'm excited about being here, and I can tell you that the process that I used to better understand the great things that we're doing was, as I do every day, I pull Curtis in and say, hey, tell me a little bit about the history. And when we're both stuck, we give Dr. Van Boren a call. So actually, Mr. Fleming is going to share a little bit about what has been in place. And then what I'll do is I will talk with you about what I've learned in speaking with our grade level teachers. So first, Curtis will give you a perspective about what's been in place, and then I'll come back. So here's Curtis.
Thank you, Dr. Feely, and thank you, everybody. So one of the things that Dr. Van Boren started early in this school year with our equity team is really trying to diversify our library and making sure we have more culturally sensitive and culturally diverse books in the library. We have a wonderful librarian that has been working on that over the years, but this year with our equitable practices team, Dr. Van Born really wanted to spearhead this and make sure that we're going full steam ahead so that the children have full access to books that might represent them in ways that they might not have been able to before. So that was really our big push to diversify our library and all the materials in there to make sure they're culturally appropriate. So that was the big push leading into this. And then Dr. Feely, if you want to talk about the grade level stuff.
I sure do. In addition to turning each day and saying, hey, Curtis, what do you know about the perspective here? I definitely use the grade level teachers, the team leaders, and they are awesome. Anytime I reach out, they have just been incredibly helpphul, very candid. And so relative to the specialist, Mrs. Newman, who's just one of our awesome librarians, and phys ed classes virtually shared aloud or read aloud from President Obama. And they engaged in a physical activity that was facilitated by Michelle. So that was a very cool experience that a number of our students had. And then in the library during Black History Month, it was celebrated by reading different books, illustrating different Black authors. They took a closer look at prominent people in an effort to honor them. Biographies of Michelle and Barack. They listened to read alouds from the former president and first lady. Some of the books that they enjoyed included Parker Looks Up, I'm Enough. So our librarian really embraces this and really does a great job in trying to also work with our staff. And we even had a little conversation about that with the staff today as we're talking about bringing more students into the building. In kindergarten, what the team had shared with me is that they collaborated to highlight the African-American hero almost daily during Black History Month. They studied Rosa Parks, Kamala, they studied Ruby Bridges, George Washington Carver, Barack, Thurgood Marshall, Harriet Tubman, Jackie Robinson, and more. And they do a lot of seesaw activities, including the achievements of the individuals. And they use links for the stories and books, either by reading aloud or highlighting the person. They said that they held a lot of conversation about civil rights and used books such as Speak Up. And really teaching our youngest learners that they have a voice and a right and an obligation to use their voice. In first grade, all teach about Martin Luther King Jr. in January. And then they teach about George Washington Carver during our Inventors unit in February. First grade doesn't have anything else in their social studies curriculum, they told me, related specifically to Black History Month. So other activities that does greatly vary by teacher does differ from year to year. And so some of the first grade teachers teach about Rosa Parks. And with that, they highlight how the bus boycott helped change laws. Some teach about Harriet Tubman and Ruby Bridges and tied into Martin Luther King. One teacher reported teaching about Ayana Najami, I may be mispronouncing that, and participated in the sit-in, segregating diners and using our Journeys text, rules and laws. And another teacher shared that her resources on these topics and more with the first grade. So they were clear that, they want to get more unified. We want them to become more unified. And, each of them, thankfully, are doing some good things. In second grade, our teachers enjoyed sharing stories about famous Black Americans with their classes this month. They've read about explorers such as Matthew Henson, Ron McNair, leaders like Henry Box Brown and Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King. Students completed a Heroes of Citizenship quilt project where they researched and displayed information about a famous Black American, and they wanted to pay attention to Black history all year long and were really committed to that. They take the time in the month of February to highlight some incredible achievements of the members of the Black community. And I don't know if you can see this, but this kind of represents the quilt. So I did say, because I really, as you know, I'm brand spanking new, I did say to each grade level after I collected their information, would share it back so that anybody on the team could read it and edit it, because I certainly wanted to make sure that it represented their voice. So really, this is their voice. I didn't put any of my voice into it at all.
And if I could just add a couple other things that we've been able to share, and thanks to the wonderful team that's running the Multicultural Parent Association, the one event we had, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, was the first, or 2.5 weeks ago, was shared by Erdenheim and our Enfield families, which was the Black Inventors. And then we actually had one of our own support staff run the Evolution of Hip Hop the other night too, which were both great turnouts for both of them. So we're really proud to be able to promote our students really engaging in those things. Some of the other things we do just for Black History Month specifically is during our morning announcements, we try to highlight some of the known and some of the unknown leaders and inspirational or factors in Black History Month, including Rosa Parks, Claudette Colvin, the Little Rock Nine, Milford 11, Bass Reeves, Bessie Coleman, George Washington Carver, Shirley Chisholm, Benjamin O. Davis Jr., Frederick Douglass, Katherine Johnson, John Lewis, Thurgood Marshall, Harriet Tubman, Isabel Baumfree, Booker T. Washington, and Ida B. Wells. So we really want to try to provide some more knowledge to our morning announcements. So we talk about for a quick 2 to 3 minutes about who these people or these groups are and the impact they made on American history, whether they received notoriety for it or they were just one of the ones that helped galvanize the movements that led after them. So we really want to try to highlight that, as well as we are collecting some more artwork from around the building that our students have shared to be able to share on our internal TV systems. And also I wanted to thank our art teacher, Mrs. Klein, because she also does a project on Martin Luther King where she has all the students create their own Martin in art class, which is a great sight to see at such a young age. Thank you again.
And I just want to add something that came up yesterday and really reflected a courageous conversation and an outcome that I think that we as a leadership team and as a staff could feel really proud of. So just really quickly, yesterday, Curtis had put out, just a note to staff. We keep on saying daily, we really want to have fun and we want to give our kids, most importantly, an opportunity to have fun. And Curtis is just dying to get dressed up. So he said, to staff through an email that was well crafted that we were going to celebrate Read Across America and bring some stories that Dr. Seuss had written. And immediately we were informed actually by our assistant superintendent that, she would like us to read some things about it. I honestly didn't have a chance at that moment. I was engaged in a couple of Zooms and Curtis went ahead and read it and went ahead and responded to staff that we're going to retract that and we'll get back to them. So he and I spent a little time later in the day when we had a moment together and talked, what we were going to do. And ultimately today, he went to the reading specialist knowing fully that this is an endeavor that they've done in the past and why he decided that it's something that we have to look at changing, and talked a little bit about, the racism that Seuss has, demonstrated, talked about to the books, and shared, some of the information that we received yesterday from Dr. Johnston. And I wasn't there because I was doing another meeting, but he shared the outcome of that was really positive. And so we're going to have a framework that we shared verbally with the staff today, and we'll share with them and the families in our news bulletin. But we're looking at, certainly we're looking at all cultures, all voices. And so the idea of Read Across America is one to inspire children to read, essentially. And so reading about just, all different authors of different races, reading about women, because that's certainly Women's History Month. And so we will have fun in that endeavor. We'll probably do a dress up or two in terms of dressing your favorite character. So I was really very encouraged about the way that our staff understood it and accepted it, and knowing that, initially I heard rumblings that there was some disappointment, but when they learned the why, knowing that we don't ever want to value, support, or worse yet, have a child, feel upset and experience racism. It's just that simple. The staff they were awesome today. So I think it's in some of those moments where we are able to do that, those teachable moments, can be inspiring and sometimes even more helpful in terms of taking next steps. So I'm proud of the staff.
Thanks so much, Dr. Feely. And I think that you've provided a perfect transition for Dr. Johnston. I think all of our principals have worked hard and continue to grow and work to lead our students and our staff in continuing to get better. And this is one example of that. Dr. Johnston, I know I've asked you to provide just a brief update on where we are with regards to the ELA and social studies curriculum revision. This was the focus of our meeting back in September. And before we get to our last bit of information, before we open up for questions and open discussion, I want to give Dr. Johnston a chance to provide an update. So they're all yours.
Thanks, Dr. Yannicone. I'm going to try to focus on that brief piece. We're really excited about the work we're doing in our curriculum across the district. In social studies, as Dr. Yannicone had shared earlier in the school year, we were nearly done that project when COVID took us and sort of put a big stop on the process last spring. So we've been excited to get restarted in that project. Over the course of the fall, the social studies departments at the middle school and high school had the opportunity to meet and share materials that they're proposing for the new courses with Dr. Crystal Lucky, who's our consultant from Villanova University. Dr. Lucky then listened to the staff and met with them and took an opportunity to review our framework of a course design, grades 6 through 12. She shared last week with them a written summary of her feedback. And today we spent our afternoon for professional learning meeting with her in cohort groups, receiving and thinking about and using that feedback. Her feedback included things like additional resources or other ways to broaden our scope of perspectives. But one of the things that became abundantly clear is working to make sure that all the rich interactions that are happening within the classroom are transparent to those on the outside. Students and teachers work very well together in our school district. We're very lucky, and the teachers focus on engaging students in rigorous learning and discussion is very important. But from the outside, that's hard to reflect. So the departments today talked about ways that they could make that transparent to the public, to the families on the website and in their course design descriptions. So we worked on that a lot today in social studies, grades 6 through 12. Fifth grade is also working on their curriculum revision project, and we're looking to get that started in the next week or two. And English language arts, they have also met with Dr. Lucky, reviewed their course descriptions and content, and they are awaiting her report and feedback sessions, which should be in the next couple of weeks. So we're moving forward, and been a really wonderful collaborative process between the staff, myself, Dr. Yannicone, and Dr. Lucky. So we're looking forward to sharing more of that information as the spring goes on. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dr. Johnston.
Sure.
And our last piece of presentation before we open it up for discussion is from Dr. Davis, our Supervisor of Support Services. I think one of the things that has been frequently referred to in news outlets, and certainly something we have discussed as an administrative team and a staff, is that this pandemic over the last year has really highlighted the socioeconomic inequalities that exist throughout the country, including in our own community. And so Dr. Davis is going to share some information. We had a brief spotlight at a board meeting last month. Wanted to make sure that we brought to this group just to inform and to start a conversation about how we can make certain that all of our students have access and opportunity. And this goes to obviously the elimination of barriers. So Dr. Davis, I am going to exit here, I believe, so that you can then share your slides.
Okay, everyone can see that? Good evening, everyone. So this is also going to be a brief presentation, despite Dr. Yannicone telling me that it would not be brief. It will be brief. So I know her better than that. So this presentation is about it's about removing barriers in the middle of us having to really make some pretty significant changes in the middle of a pandemic that we were unprepared for. And so what the team basically did was we identified some barriers initially in March when this came upon it. And so the first thing that we all thought of was what the financial impact would be to the community, and whether or not our students who had been relying on our food services would have access to food in the community. And so I'm going to start by sharing about that. But we also, many other barriers emerged as we began to plan what would then happen in the fall and what we might be able to do. And so some of those things included technology devices, what number of devices do people have in the house? What was the age of those devices? Would they be able to use those devices to access the kinds of software that we needed them to be able to access? Wi-Fi became an issue. Even some families who had Wi-Fi, when everyone then started working at home or multiple children were using that Wi-Fi, it turned out, even for some of our administrative staff, it turned out that the Wi-Fi was not quite what they thought the Wi-Fi was. And so we addressed that in some ways. We also ran into some technology awareness issues. So there were certain programs that we had used in school that children were familiar with, but that families really weren't familiar with. And how do we make sure that families also have the information that they need to help their child to access online learning? We noticed that there were some pretty significant changes in family structure. One of the biggest impacts that we found was that extended families really felt like they needed to remain in their own homes due to safety issues. So a family that might have relied on a grandparent for, let's say, after school care or even during the day care, didn't necessarily have access to the extended family that they did previously. And we also noticed that there was and this, I would say this one is one that we're still struggling with, is the need for community supports. As the pandemic has gone on, we have found that many of the community supports have shifted. And so it's been a challenge to stay ahead of the game in terms of what we're offering to families. Many of the things that we might have offered pretty consistently before are no longer available in the same way. And so we've had to pivot many, many times over within the counseling, social work, nursing departments to try to maintain up-to-date information to share with families. And then the last one that I think that is an area that we're continuing to focus on is the idea of isolation. We have kids that feel like they belong, but they're not necessarily engaged in the same way that they would have been before. It's been an ongoing conversation. The high school team, we had a staff meeting recently to look at attendance, to look at, are we putting eyes on our kids as often as we think we need to check on their mental health, to check on their isolation, to give them a little bit of face-to-face, even if it's through a computer screen. So the first thing we addressed in the spring was that we identified ways in which we could support the community with food. And so I had a lovely group of staff volunteers that are all listed there who showed up and engaged in a delivery program. So basically we turned them all into delivery drivers. We worked with the transportation department, who made us wonderful delivery routes, and they would package the car. You can see there, we would all come together, package the car, and they would drive the food around the township, making sure that they got to the families that they needed. In the spring, we were able to provide over 20,000 free of reduced meals, which are bagged breakfast or bagged lunch meals that came from the school. And so far this fall, we have been able to provide it's actually over 14,000. It's closer to 15,000. I was hoping it would be 15,000 when I typed it up. We didn't quite there yet. So over 14,000 meals, and those have gone to all students who have been in school. We are not isolating just free and reduced lunch. One of the things that we wanted to be really careful of is that we have many families who are needing help for the first time, and navigating through that process, it has been a barrier in and of itself. And so we're continuing to try to talk. In fact, I was in a meeting earlier this day to talk about what we might need to do between now and next September to make sure that we are communicating clearly to all of our families how you fill out the free and reduced lunch form, how you can get additional supports that might be available to your family. In addition to the meals that we provided through the school district, we also connected with several nonprofits. So Shane's Kindness, the MIP Foundation, as well as Springfield Rotary. And we put out a call to the community to for funding so that we could provide meals throughout the summer, because the system that would have allowed us to do that through the school district would not allow us to do it through the summer. And so we raised quite a bit of money. Over $73,000 were raised from the community. And as a result, we worked with Giordano's Produce, Giant, Tonelli's Takeout, Campbell's Restaurant. We were able to give over 1,200 produce boxes to support over 100 families within our community throughout the summer. So each week they either got a produce box or a $30 gift card to Giant for all 12 of those weeks, which was pretty amazing. And so I'm going to show you a very short video. It's 2 minutes long, just so that you can see what that process looked like. We go. So in addition to all of the community food support, we also offered quite a few family and health services throughout the district. And so one of those things was that over the summer, the school district worked with KidView to make sure that we were offering additional time for families who might need additional childcare. You know, during the when we were in virtual, we extended our high school tutoring hours so that students who needed extra support could get it. We maintained the asynchronous Wednesdays so that students could get additional support, and as well as teachers be able to collaborate with each other in order to provide assistance to students. And then we've continued to offer virtual and in-school counseling supports, which include things like virtual suicide prevention risk assessments. We've continued to offer our SAP programming and continued to offer school-based outpatient even throughout the pandemic. We've continued to communicate the community resources that are available. One of the things we've really struggled with is the mental health organizations struggled to get themselves back to normal operating capacity. And so we have struggled with how to get our families services, how to get our kids in crisis services. And so the team has continually worked together to make sure that we can assist families who are really struggling. We have also had some success with socially distant home visits, which happen basically on the front lawn. In fact, I just talked to Dr. Ritt this week about doing a couple of, we're going to call them home/work visits, because we do have some students who have increased their work hours, and perhaps a few of them have done it at the cost of them attending their regularly scheduled courses. And so Dr. Ritt is going to have a moment where he explains that that's really not how this should be working, but let's try to be supportive about it. And then finally, we've tried really hard to figure out ways to help students to attend more often. We've done a lot of SAPEs. We've had some conversations with lots of families and lots of kids about ways in which we can be flexible and get the kids to attend with more regularity. In terms of additional supports that we've offered to families, we have done many deliveries and contactless supply pickups. That includes things like school supplies, textbooks, hygiene kits, gift cards. I mean, you name it, we have figured out a way to get it in the hands of families that couldn't access it otherwise. We have been continually updating this COVID dashboard, the community resources and the testing sites, so that we can get the information out to families as easily as possible. That has also included some financial resources that are available within the community, including some non-eviction support and food distribution. And you can imagine that that has changed throughout the pandemic. Where folks can get food has been modified. And so it has been a complicated process to stay ahead of the curve on that. And I think that our social work team has really done a very nice job updating the resources and making sure that they're available. We have updated the health office website with some links to important information that we have found from the Pennsylvania Department of Health and the Montgomery County Office of Public Health. We've continued to offer virtual medical support with all of our nurses. We moved to an online registration system midway through all of the pandemic. And so it involved, it looked something like a few of us standing in the bus circle of the middle school, grabbing the last few paper applications for registration process out the window of other people's cars, and manually inputting it into the system to make it as flexible as possible especially for our kindergarten families who were registering for the first time. I'm happy to report we are in a much better position now, and that online portal is working very well. We also raised another $28,000. I'm not sure how that's possible. That puts us over $100,000 from our Wall of Kindness. And this year we've been able to do contactless gift card distribution and coordination with a local company, BQ Basements. And we also did the Erin at the middle school did a library book delivery, which was featured in the news, which was very nice. Continued things that we did, we pulled off a flu vaccination clinic in the middle of a pandemic, and in the hopes that perhaps preventing the flu might also help the community. We individualized our family nursing support. Our nurses are reaching out to every family who is calling in to say that their child has any symptoms that are related to COVID, to try to talk the families through the process of how to get tested and what kinds of things they might want to do in terms of isolating from others and the like. We have continued to message and educate the school community. We actually have a family meeting planned early next week to talk a little bit more about the kinds of things that we have in place in school to keep everyone safe. We've continued with our nursing partnerships with the different offices of public health. And the technology is probably the biggest thing. Everything that Mr. Oliver has ever told us we should try to do, I feel like we have done. And so there's a COVID-19 resource website for technology support. There's a family self-help portal. There's a device request process for families that might need additional support with devices in the home. They have offered virtual tech support help, appointment booking. Hotspots have been offered to kids without internet access, or with spotty internet access, or who are having trouble getting into their classes. The teachers were able to reach out to the social workers, who then were able to get the hotspots out into the families. The Active Directory has been changed so that we were able to increase the security system. As you can imagine, trying to get everyone to access what they used to be able to access in district while they were in their homes was a challenge and a significant barrier that the technology department really came together to offer the support that they needed. We have been able to double the internet bandwidth capacity. So we went from 1 gig to 2 gig in order to support all of the programs that we have put in place. We enhanced the firewall for protection and security. That was when you put the devices in the hands of kids, but then they take it out of network, that can be a complicated process. And so the tech department really came together to do that. We have moved to virtual board meetings and virtual meetings in general, hence us being here this evening. And so we've talked as an administrative team about how to continue some of these access points for families that might not have been able to be in person. Is there a way for us to continue some of these things to get access to more folks? And then Zoom, everybody loves Zoom, right? We have 309 Zoom accounts now that allow us all to have better access. And finally, we plan on continuing most of these things. So, our goal is to remove as many barriers as possible that may exist for families. Some barriers we knew existed, they continue to exist. Some are brand new. Some of our folks are asking for help for the first time ever. And that's a complicated process in and of itself that requires a great level of sensitivity from all of us. And so we are continuing to add pages to the website as new resources come up. We're continuing to e-blast and have family meetings to try to get the information out to folks. And we've learned that there are some things that we've done that we would like to continue to do. And so creating opportunities for us to have that kind of dialogue or to get that kind of feedback from the community. Hey, this is a really great one that we'd love to have this continue. Those are the kinds of things that we're looking forward to figuring out what we can maintain moving forward. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Lauren. I think, Mr. Oliver, if you can start to bring everybody in up to panelist level so we can see everybody's faces. And as you're doing that, I'll just remind everybody as they're switching over, I think in the last year, we knew that there were socioeconomic inequalities, but the two areas that were hardest hit were food insecurity and technology access in regards to accessing school, and food insecurity, I think we tackled right away and continue to tackle for families. And the technology piece, we knew there was a gap. Perhaps we didn't know how wide it was. So we've been really working to try to close that gap. So it's nice to start to see your faces as you come into the room. Those of you who've been listening intently for the last, hour and 10 minutes. So we want to open it up for discussion, see what questions you have or feedback you have for us in any of these areas or other areas. So the floor is open. There's no questions in the chat, so happy for whatever anyone would like to bring up. Anybody want to unmute? Are there any questions? Yeah.
Hi, I'll unmute. This is Patty Van Zanten, and, I'm fairly new to the district, and, I'm in Enfield, I'm in my classroom, and to be a part of this meeting tonight is super exciting to hear all the wonderful initiatives that are taking place. Sometimes you're, as you're in your classroom, the four walls are around you, and sometimes being a teacher is a lonely position. You're in there with your students, but you don't really have all that time to collaborate. But to hear all the super exciting stuff going on is very exciting. So I just wanted to add that.
Thanks, Patty. I appreciate that. I think we all appreciate that. I think.
Yeah, I mean, I just, being in my classroom, I just haven't heard it. And it's just really, we all are working so very hard, but all of these initiatives down to getting voices from students and focus groups. Like, I'm a Title I teacher and I love it. And I do sounds and letters and I know how important that is. But just to look at the district overall and what everyone is doing is just truly amazing.
Thanks, Patty. Barb Johnson asked, Lauren, you might have the answer to that question in the chat about the SHARE program.
Yeah, I'm familiar with SHARE. That is actually one of the places that folks can go. Typically, the problem with SHARE is the location and the distance that families take to travel, but it is one of the places that typically we will, we've actually sent many kids down there to do work on day of service, but I'm not sure that that's the most easily accessible for most of our families.
Okay, so where are our families going, Lauren? It might be helpful if anyone on the call has a community member ask them, where are they going?
Most of our families are using Maddie Dixon in Ambler or North Hills, or they're using Chelton, which is located at Chelton Baptist Church. It's called the Seeds of Hope, and that's in Drescher. So from a distance standpoint, those are typically the ones that they access more often.
Okay, thank you. So Tonya, I saw you raise your hand.
Hi.
I think Barb raised her hand as well.
Oh my gosh. I'm over here like overwhelmed with pride, but yet encouraged about moving into a direction where that great work that I hear happening at Erdenheim and at the middle school and at the high school, like it could just be organic and seamless in a transition from the youngest to the forgers of our future. Like I said to Sister Biel Tawfiq, one of the MPA beautiful, wonderful activities is that the legacy of 2021 will be felt in 3031. And, we're talking about the 1619 project and, all of the truths that we want to put forth are so encouraging for me to be in this district over 27 years and knowing that we're moving in with momentum in a good direction. But like my colleague, Mrs. Van Zanten said, a lot of times we just don't know this stuff is happening. And then when we hear backlash or we hear criticism or we hear critique, it becomes oh, well, you're not doing, it's almost like, blaming. And I just want that, although the impetus of it had a lot of things that we, some really hard truths, I'm encouraged to be a part of that. So that in connection with Dr. Johnston, I heard a lot about the language arts, ELA, and social studies for 5th grade. But as I have discourse with my families, I want to be able to say, like Dr. Feely was very forthright in saying, our curriculum does not have Black history in it. So I know we're looking at that. I just don't know when that's going to happen. I want to be able to say, okay, these are the things that we're going for. We're looking at this curriculum this year, this happening next year. And not asking for a pinpoint, but I want to say, listen, we are moving in this direction. It can be a matter of collaboration over grades, between schools. I love the assemblies activities that you're doing over there, Dr. Marco and Dr. McLaren. I want to be a part of that. Like, that sounds so fun. So, hey, that's just what I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Tonya. And I think as you remember being part of that social studies group, I think that our elementary teachers, when we started the curriculum review process 2 years ago, they were also adopting Envision. And the teachers just between Journeys and Envision at Enfield, that was what they could handle at the time. But I know Dr. Johnson has it on her radar to be able to continue to have these conversations. so that we can bring more direct instruction time in social studies to our primary building in the future. So yes, and I appreciate your willingness to be part of that process. Barb Johnston, I see your hand up.
Yeah, as far as the SHARE program, there's also the Fill Abundance. I know during the summer, there's different churches that were getting food from Fill Abundance. And I would go down and get cases of food and take it to other different communities that didn't have it. And they said all you needed was a nonprofit number or something to have food to be delivered to a location. So I don't know if that's something to look at also.
Barb, I would be happy to connect with you about that.
Okay.
That would be great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks a lot. Anyone else, questions or feedback, things that you feel like we're not addressing right now that we need to be addressing? Our plan for the next, we have audit work in March. And then so our equity team will be working on the audit in March. In April, I've asked our EL team to present on the immigrant and refugee experience and the experience of our English learners, not only during the pandemic, but as members of our Springfield Township community. It's a group of students and families who are often more reticent to come forward and to share questions or concerns. And so we want to make sure that we're doing what we can to provide a sense of belonging to our English learners. Last year alone, I know early in the pandemic, it was heartbreaking for me to learn that we had two parents in our community who were removed in the middle of the night by ICE, and children who lost that parent was returned to their home country, and the children stayed here. And so those were traumatic events that some of our school children experienced very early in the pandemic last year, and just heartbreaking. So we're going to have those presentations in April. And then we may have an additional meeting. You'll learn a little bit more after our administrative team meets with the NAACP Youth Leadership Group on Sunday regarding disproportionality in treatment of students of color. And so we're going to work on that rollout, whether that'll be building-based or community-based or both. We're going to decide this weekend along with the group of students. So that's where we are. Is there anything else? Let's see, Angela, will we also be having meetings inclusive of our students with disabilities? That's a great point. And yes, I think that Dr. Johnston would be very happy to work with the new team in her office. Dr. Johnston, do you want to jump in there?
Sure, Angela, when we say all means all. So everything that we're doing is certainly inclusive of students with disabilities. But if specifically, we'll continue to do some of our parent focus groups. And Dr. Yannicone and I are looking at ways in which we can pull together some parent leadership just to advise us and think about ways in which we can get feedback and make sure that we're all working together to raise these issues, whether it's around language of origin, whether it's around race or ethnicity, and certainly around students with disabilities.
I think on a related note, Angela, you may be familiar with, and I certainly know many people on the call are familiar with, Universal Design for Learning. And that is one of our goals heading into next year and likely several years of both professional development and curriculum work. Dr. Johnson is attending right now a series of workshops that are linking sense of belonging, anti-racism, and universal design for learning. And again, that sort of gets down to the ground level, the grassroots of how we can make sure we're meeting the needs of all students at all times. Barb, is your hand still up or is that a new hand? I'm not sure.
I think it's still up. I don't think it was taken. Thank you.
You got it. Tanya?
Yeah, the universal design for learning. Props to Dr. Van Voren. I remember, oh my gosh, it feels like 15 years ago, but we were introduced to that design. I believe we had an in-service on that, and it sort of got us in the thinking in the modality of universal design. And at the time, I'm like, okay, where does this fit in? It's like a bunch, but it's making sense in the puzzle pieces. So it has been introduced, to be sure, Sister Tawfiq. So it is something that, you know, it takes a lot of rethinking, sort of, I guess. But, you know, I know that has been you know, an initiative that's been put out there, at least within the last 5 years or so.
Yeah, it's a comprehensive look at instructional design. And to your point, Tanya, it will require rethinking. And right now, I think most of us know that the brains of our staff and administration are close to fried, as are the brains of our parents, right? We would like to be out of this pandemic, catch our breath before we jump onto the next, you know, tackle the next hill here. But UDL is in our future for sure. Jim, I see your hand.
It's not me. It's actually my wife, Janina. So she's going to talk.
Hi.
I am actually a kindergarten teacher in Abington, but I heard you mention universal design for learning. So I am actually participating in the Montgomery County IU book study, and it's called Anti-Racism and Universal Design for Learning, Building Expressways to Success. So the book study is actually happening now, but I just wanted to mention the book. You want blood?
Yes, and Mrs. Etlin, I don't know if you saw, but both Krista Keister and Damian Johnson held their copy.
Yeah.
They're in that workshop with you.
Okay, great.
And Dr. Van Voren, don't forget about Dr. Van Voren.
She didn't lift, I didn't see her raise the book, but I know she's in the book. It's a terrific.
All right, great,
resource.
great. I just
It's
wanted
great.
to mention that.
It's really good, isn't it? Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. That'll be another book, Dr. Johnson, that we'll have to buy for the whole administrative team afterwards.
It's really good. So that's all right. It's a really good investment. I think Krista and Dr. Van Voren would agree with me.
They're
And
nodding.
all my
Dr.
interns, I have
Schrader is
97 of
nodding.
them.
I have been told on occasion that I hand you too much reading material, so it would have to come from you and not from me. I've been warned that I'm giving the administrative team too much reading material. So.
Not too much, just we're happy to do it. It's good. It's good work.
Absolutely.
It's exciting stuff.
All right. All right, everybody. Well, it's 7:54. We try to make these meetings no longer than 90 minutes. If there's anything else, we have just a few minutes. Any other questions or good news or anything you'd like to share?
So you always have to leave with a good note. One of the things I'd like to say is just thank you again for supporting MPA, the MPA leadership in terms of allowing Lauren. We have to throw her out there. She you know, she's leading this crazy, wonderfully challenging schedule. She's keeping us in shape, but also our colleagues and families with EHSP. I mean, it's not easy, right? And administration, teachers, staff, and I mean, for me, having children across the entire district at the different levels, seeing, you know, all of the growth and the challenges. If there are any other parents, you know, on this call, one of the things is that we say, we understand nothing goes overnight, right? But the seed has been planted, and it's difficult, but I just like to thank you all and Dr. Yannicone. I know you everybody switched. I was like, I need a new organizational chart of the district. Just to thank you all for your continued support in this time. And I think, you know, parents as teachers now, you know, hopefully you guys get a whole lot more respect when we come back, and raises. No, only playing. No, really, and vaccines too. So.
Thanks, Angela. That's a tall order: raises, vaccines, and respect. But I will say, I mean, look, the Multicultural Parents Association has done a phenomenal job always, and in the past, and in this month, have really, I don't know who set the schedule, but you guys put yourselves, I think 1 week you had 4 nights, 4 events, which is, aggressive.
Lauren Camper. That's Lauren Camper.
I know, Jim. I don't know that your wife might not have been thrilled with that calendar.
I know. Right?
But you were very, very fortunate to have a terrific group of parents involved in the community. It's a terrific community. It'll be really nice when we can meet in the library at the middle school again and see you all in person. And hopefully that's how the fall will start. I don't think we'll see that this spring. I think we'll be virtual in these meetings till the end of the year. But you are going to get a survey, parents, at the end of the week, and we're going to be able to bring your kids back 4 days after spring break if that's what you would like. So Angela, we're going to do our best to empty your house of kids after spring break if that's what you would like. All right. And I think that's a good positive note to end on. So thank you all. Our next meeting is April 21st. April 21st. And again, it will be focused on our immigrant, refugee, English learner population. All right, thanks so much, everybody. We're going to stop the recording. Have a great night and thank you for being here.
Thank you.